The Hard Shoulder with Kieran Cuddihy
with Nissan
on News Talk.
Apart from porn, the internet is also great for affirmations. A picture of a blue sky or beautiful countryside, along with text telling you that you're special, that you're loved, that everything is going to be okay. With almost 200,000 followers, Dave Tarnowski is big in the affirmations community, except his are slightly different. You matter, just not that much. Being one example, it's called disappointing affirmations. Dave, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Sean. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for talking with us today. I imagine that you had many kind of motives for setting this up. One being all that faux positivity is absolutely sickening.
Absolutely. It's out here we call it toxic positivity. I think the word toxic gets thrown around way too much, and it's sort of lost its meaning. I actually so I was listening before the commercial break and you referred to it as rubbish affirmations. I think rubbish positivity is much, much better.
Because it gives a completely unrealistic view of life, and possibly to people who are quite vulnerable, and it's kind of selling them a pup of everything's going to be okay.
Absolutely. I mean, it works for some people. You know, and like I've seen it work. My ex did morning affirmations all the time, and she's extremely successful. But there is a segment of the population where it's just like this whole positive mental attitude. They call it PMA. It's nonsense. You know, it's nonsense to expect people to be okay every day. Some people have an okay day once a month, you know, if not less frequently.
Yeah. And it often strikes me as almost somewhat tyrannical in that you're not being completely positive all the time, and it doesn't give you permission to have the full range of human experiences.
Yeah, like there's one thing that comes to mind. People will be like, well, you know what? If you tell yourself you can't do something, well, you're right. And there is some truth to that, right? But there are some people like myself who have a hard time doing one thing at a time, let alone more than one thing at a time. But that doesn't mean that we're not trying. It doesn't mean that we don't want to. You know, it's just there's part of this lovely gray matter in our heads that is conflicted. You know, and it's just like, you must do this now, but you can't do this now.
And yes, I will make the most of today. I will be both depressed and anxious the entire time. I particularly like that one. Now, you got a diagnosis of bipolar a couple of years ago, so I suppose this kind of informs that as well.
It does to an extent. Ever since I was a teenager, I've always been, you know, I mean, back then I'm going to be 45 next month. So we're talking about the 80s and 90s, you know, where therapy was, you know, basically a, you know, verboten, you know, to even speak of, let alone, God forbid, you knew somebody or someone in your family was going to therapy. And, you know, I was a dark teenager and, you know, I would be chided. It'd be like, oh, what, you're going to kill yourself? And now it's like, oh, my God, you know, how could anyone say something like that? You know? Yeah. So it's great that times are changing, but part of what I do, and I run a couple of other Instagrams that I've had for a number of years, and this new page is birthed from those in a way, because those were more niche. Like one of them was Nick Cave and the bad memes. I'm sure you know who Nick Cave is. Yes. And it started out very silly memes, and then suddenly I was like, wait, I can sort of reach an audience here. And at first, when I started doing them, I got accused of glamorizing mental illness. How in the world can you glamorize mental illness? You know? And so I didn't let that stop me. I just kept going. And I do feel like, I mean, I don't want to take credit for being the one who made this happen, you know, but I do feel good about having created communities, and I'm certainly creating a community with this new page of people who get this, because one of the biggest things with people who have mental health issues is they have a desire to feel seen for who they are, not judged, but seen and acknowledged.
Does everybody get it?
Oh, not everybody gets it. No, there are, I've certainly had some controversial posts. Like one of my early ones was, have a panic attack, you've earned it.
Yes.
Right. Now, I've had many panic attacks over my life. They're not funny when you're in them, right?
Yes.
But to have a sense of humor about it, and to be like, this happens, and the whole you earned it thing. It's like, obviously you had a lot of stuff happen that, brought you to that place. But tons of the responses I got were, oh my God, how could you make fun of this? But then there were also a number of people who are just like, I get panic attacks and this is funny. This is, and so what kind of disturbed me when I first started the page was there were people who were taking them for exactly what they said. And they were like, yeah, like there was one, I want to just go back in time right here. Scrolling through my page right now. It says, it's okay to not be okay. Just make sure you pretend you're okay around others. Emotions make people uncomfortable.
Yes.
And people looked at that and they were like, yeah. Like I think at the very beginning, I had a lot of the wrong element following me. But sort of the beauty of Instagram is when people go, oh, it's not that kind of page, they'll unfollow, but then other people will follow. And, it just finally, finally, it's only been 4 months since this page has existed. People are getting it.
Is it hard to keep thinking up new affirmations?
Sometimes. I've been writing for years, and so I definitely have a particular style, a particular sort of sarcastic, nihilistic, misanthropic kind of bent to my writing. But it's always with a twist. There's a reason for it to be there, and it's quite often poking fun at the people who would say things like that.
Yes. Yeah. I know exactly. Sometimes very difficult people who wouldn't get it, who would be so literal minded, but those people do exist in the world. Dave, lovely to speak with you. Thanks very much for doing so today. The name of Dave Tarnowski's account is called Disappointing Affirmations.